Welcome back to part 2. Now we're going to have a look at downloading this Metasploitable 2. And just as an introduction, folks, I've got just a brief overview of what this is and why we're going to use it. So the idea of Metasploitable 2 is that it's an intentionally vulnerable Linux virtual machine. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to be using Kali Linux, our virtual machine that we've just set up. We're going to use the Kali Linux to attack this virtual machine. Okay, and again, the idea of this virtual machine is that it's got intentional problems or vulnerabilities with it. So it's very, very good to conduct security training, test security tools, and also to practice some pen testing techniques. So that's why we're going to use it. So the first thing to do is to obviously download Metasploitable 2. So what I've got is, I've got a link here that I'm just going to pop. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to pop it into my browser. And we're going to go straight to that download spot. And what you'll be able to see, guys, is this is just under a gigabyte in size. Okay, so depending on your internet connection, it may take some time to download. What you'll actually receive back here, so you can read this little bit of information just talking about, the default login and password is MSF admin and MSF admin. And it also mentions a note here to say never expose this VM to an untrusted network. Use NAT or host-only mode. And that's what we're going to do essentially. We're going to actually use the host-only mode so that it can only be seen within our host, and other virtual machines can see this vulnerable machine. So what I've done to save us, rather than download this again, what I've got is on my in my folder, in my network forensics folder, I've downloaded this earlier, and you can see that when we download this, it comes in a zip file. So the first thing we're going to need to do is just double click on that folder to unzip it. Okay, so we'll just extract that zip folder. And once that's fully extracted, what we're going to do is we're going to actually go back to our VirtualBox. So we'll be able to open up VirtualBox. And what I'm going to do is, it's very similar now. So you'll see that this guy is opened up. It's created this new folder on my hard drive. You can see I've got a VMDK file. That will come in very, very useful in just a few moments. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my Oracle VirtualBox, and this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to File, and actually, in fact, it's very, very easier. In fact, I'm just going to go to create a new virtual machine here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this Metasploitable, and I'm going to call this Metasploitable 2. I'm going to ensure it's Linux, and I'm going to say version 64-bit. Perfect. I'm going to click on Continue, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set an amount of virtual RAM. In this case, 1024 should be absolutely fine. So I'm going to click Continue. Now this is a space whereby usually you might click on just create a new virtual hard disk. But in actual fact, what we're going to do, guys, is we've got the hard disk downloaded. That's what we just did from the website, and that's what I've got on my folder. So what I'm going to say is do not add a virtual hard disk. I'm actually going to say use an existing virtual hard disk file. So what I can do is I can click on this little button here to basically select one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this Metasploitable one in here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to find my folder. So I've got a desktop folder and I've got network forensics, and inside there, because it's now unzipped, I've got this folder. I'm going to click on this, and you'll notice here I can select this Metasploitable VMDK, and that's what I want to open. So I'm going to click on Open. And what that should do, if I scroll down to the bottom, you can see it's not attached, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose this one to attach this to my hard disk, and that's what it's now selecting as the hard disk. I'm going to click on Create, and what it's going to do now is it's going to create that Metasploitable 2. Now you'll notice here, folks, straight away it's connected to my NAT network out of the box. But what I can do is, if I like, I could change the settings there straight away. From settings, go into my network, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this to be connected to my host only network again, and I'm going to ensure that it's selected VBox Net 0. So again, that's the same network as my Kali Linux. Once I click on OK to that, it's going to change that to my VBox host only adapter, and I'm going to start up this intentionally vulnerable machine. So in this case, I'm going to start up Metasploitable 2. You'll also see in the background I've got my Kali Linux machine. So what you can see is in this section I've got two VMs running side by side here. Here's my Metasploitable, and if I just move this to the side of the screen, I've got Kali Linux running side by side. My Metasploitable is booting up as we speak. Okay, it might take a few minutes to start. While that's happening, I'm going to log back into my Kali machine. So, I've put in the wrong password there. I did change this, didn't I, before? So I'm going to pop in my correct password. So part one, we saw that we did indeed have an IP address on that host-only network. We saw the host address was, if I scroll back up, it was this guy here, 192.168.56.118. Now what we should be seeing is over on this right-hand side, we should be seeing our Metasploitable. And what we'll be able to see, folks, is we should be able to click into this now. So let's go over here and let's click into my virtual machine. Okay, and I'm just going to clear the screen so we can actually see what we're typing. Okay, so here you can see down here, oh, my screen is unfortunately, guys, you're not seeing this because my screen resolution has been set not very well in this case. Okay, it's telling me, you can see here when I'm pressing enter, it's saying login incorrect. So what I'm going to do, just bear with me 1 second, I'm going to move it onto my other screen here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and just get back to that initial screen. So let's just see if I can move that over. So you can see here now I'm at the prompt Metasploitable login, and it's even telling me here, guys, it's telling me that the login information is MSF admin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type that in here. So I'm going to click back into my machine and let's see if it'll allow me. Okay, so let's give it a second. And unfortunately, sometimes when we're running and hogging the RAM, we can see that some things can. Okay, so it is trying again. What I'm going to do, folks, is for whatever reason my screen display on my second monitor isn't showing. So what I'm going to do on my other screen is I'm just going to type in, while you're online here with me, I'm going to type in this MSF admin, and then I'm going to say MSF admin as my password. I'm going to type that in. Okay, let's try that again. MSF admin. Let's spell that correctly. And I'm going to say MSF admin. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this screen over so hopefully you can see this. So what I've just done there, guys, is you can see that because the screen isn't showing quite correctly on the second monitor, you can probably see there I've typed the password incorrectly a couple of times. On my last attempt there, you can see that I got it correctly. So now you can see that I'm now at the command prompt. And let's just see if we can just make this full screen, guys, because maybe that will help me. Okay, it's still coming in very, very badly on the screen, guys. It's showing me very, very incorrectly. It's like it's showing me here a little bit more better on this second screen, but again, my resolution needs to be set better. I might need to adjust the second screen on the monitor that I'm using. Let's just try and open that up nice and big. Okay, that's a little bit better. So what I can see now, folks, is, and hopefully you're seeing this okay with me, this is the joy of having two screens. Sometimes it doesn't quite work out very well with the resolution and so forth. What I'm going to do is, because this is an older version of an Ubuntu system, I can use the ifconfig command here. And what I want to do is I want to check to see, do I have an IP address on this host-only network? And what you can see here, folks, is indeed I do. Look, I've got an IP address, 192.168.56.119. So what I want to actually try and do now, folks, is I want to see, can I ping from my Kali Linux machine, can I ping from here over to my Metasploitable? So I'm going to go 192, ping 192.168.56.119. And then once I press enter, you can see I've now got connectivity, folks, between one virtual machine to my other virtual machine. Now remember the idea of this lab. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be running attacks from my Kali Linux machine against this Metasploitable machine. Also, we're not quite finished there yet. On our document that we had earlier on, folks, we said that our last step, well, we had a couple of last steps, we said that we could also bring into our lab is a Windows 10 enterprise machine. So what I can do, folks, is depending on, as you can see, I'm on a Mac computer. So what I could also do for my lab and testing, I could bring in a Windows machine. So if I bring back up my browser, and if I open up a new Chrome tab here, and if I paste this URL, it should bring me to the TechNet website, or this evaluation website from Microsoft. And in this case, what I can do is I can fill in just a small form just with my details, and what I can do is I can essentially download an evaluation copy of Windows 10. It will give us 90 days free. Okay, so again, we can trial this out for 90 days. I'll literally just click on continue to download the ISO Enterprise. It'll ask me for some details, and then essentially I'll click continue after I enter these details, and it will download a Windows 10 version. Like what I've done with Kali Linux and also Metasploitable, in advance, folks, what I've done is I've downloaded earlier this morning a ISO image. So what you could do now in this case is you could go back to your virtual machine, VirtualBox, and what you could do is create a new VM, and you could name this, for example, Windows 10 Enterprise. And essentially you could say, I want to make sure, so this is picking this up as Windows NT4. I don't want to do that. I want to just have a look to see, I want to find, just ensure that I pick Windows 10 64-bit. I'm going to continue. I'm going to set this, so the default here, folks, and again, this is why it's good to have a good amount of RAM, particularly if you're running VMs simultaneously. But again, if you've got a very little RAM, what you can do is just turn on, maybe if you wanted to run a test later with the Windows VM and just Kali, you could just have those two on. Maybe then switch off or turn off the Windows machine when you're running attacks between your Kali and your Metasploitable too. So what I'll do is I'll say okay to the 2 gigs. I'll create a virtual hard disk, that's perfect. I'll click on create. I'll use the default VDI image as my hard disk image. I'll click continue. I'll do dynamically allocated hard disk. That's absolutely fine because I'm quite limited to the hard drive space. So I'll set a size of 50 gig initially. Okay, and remember that won't be used straight away. It'll actually, because it's dynamic, it will only use what the operating system takes up. And I'll click on create, and there is my Windows 10 Enterprise. What I'll also need to do is, the final step to get this to work is I'll need to go to settings, and I'll need to go into storage, and I'll need to select my CD. Isn't that right, guys? So if you haven't done this before, it's a matter of just choosing a disk file to boot up that ISO. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a disk file, and I'm going to go into my desktop, my network forensics folder. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select this Windows 10 basically ISO. And you can see it was quite a big file that came down. So again, just make sure when you're doing this stuff that you don't have any limits with your ISP. Because again, there are some big images coming down. And I'm going to click on OK to that. Once I've done that, I can run through the process of starting up my Windows 10 machine. And this is going to bring me through the process of essentially bringing me through. So this is going to ask me, okay, it's going to say, please select a virtual optical disk. Okay, I'm going to make sure that I select the correct one. Let's just make sure. I'm going to go add. Just make sure that I've selected the correct one. I'm going to make sure I select that one again, guys. And I'm going to click choose. Okay, to make sure that I'm choosing that. And I'm going to click start. Okay. So that's obviously prompting me again. But what this should do now, guys, is it's going to boot up into the starting procedure for my Windows 10 Enterprise Edition. So it's going to start to ask me a series of questions now to get this Windows 10 trial edition started up in this virtual machine. So that's going to take a little bit of time to complete, folks. So essentially what we've done, to just recap while that's taking place, what we've done in this particular video, guys, is what we've seen is we've installed and we've downloaded our Metasploitable 2. We've ensured to put it on the correct host-only adapter so it has visibility of our Kali Linux machine. We've downloaded our Windows 10 image, although in my case, I slightly cheated because I already downloaded it this morning. And then basically now we're going through the process of setting up this Windows setup. So in this case, what we'll have to do is we'll have to go in through this install. So I need to choose the language, choose the time and the keyboard, and essentially I would install this. So I'm not going to go through this install. Hopefully you're watching this video and you've done this many times before. But what I would say is, as you go through this, just read the steps carefully and take it one step at a time. You should be able to download your environment very quickly. One last thing I would mention about the Kali Linux, folks, is in this little tutorial, what I did have up here, folks, is when you install Kali Linux, it is a good idea to do this. For example, update your apt-get, so update your packet lists. So what you can do is you can do an apt-get, okay, update. And what you can also do then is you're going to need to do then an apt-get upgrade. And what this is going to do, it's going to upgrade your whole system and it's going to install the new packages. So essentially this will take, by doing this, guys, this could take, it's saying you need to, so when I'm running this, I think it's asking me for, maybe it's asking me for sudo privileges, unable to acquire the DPA. Lock RU root. Okay, so what I might need to do here, guys, if that doesn't work, I just need to go apt-get. So just stick in sudo in front there. And when I do this, it should prompt me for probably the password. So I'll need to pop in my password. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to essentially update the system. Okay, so essentially that was very quickly. That did that. Okay, let's maybe just run through that again. Let's go to app update. Let's do a sudo apt-get update, just to make sure that it gets the latest packages. Okay, you can see that that's downloading now, and I expect this to be finished pretty quickly. And then usually then the upgrade takes a little bit of time. So let's just do an upgrade now. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, so it's basically saying, there you go. So there needs to be 720 megabytes of archives. Do you want to continue? So essentially, this will take some time. So I usually always do this. Now, again, what you could do before this happens, guys, always a good idea. What you could do is you could go back to your VMs at this point. You could take a snapshot of, for example, one of your VMs before you do any updates. You could click on here, go to snapshots, and take a snapshot. So you could essentially take a snapshot. So this could be even before initial updates. Okay, so that means then at any stage, if something goes wrong with those updates, you can always revert back to this previous state. And that's something that I always like to do, because if any problems happen, I can always revert back to that initial stage. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to press Y and return, and that's essentially going to take, probably we're looking at about a half an hour, maybe a little bit less. So I'm going to let that run away, guys. And at this moment in time, what we'll probably see also is our Windows machine also. Let's have a look at the status of this. Okay, so it's saying, I need to accept some agreements. Okay, guys, from this point onwards, it's just a matter of going through step by step on my Windows to get that Windows 10 set up. And you can see in the background, I'm also updating my Kali Linux. I hope this has been valuable for you, and thank you for viewing.